and I was in my mid-20s about this time, I started to approach my life with, how do I want to build an extraordinary life for myself? I want these great things, but now what do I need to do and who do I need to become? And that started, Francesca, the beginning of my spiritual journey. I mean, that was me diving in and saying like, okay, well, let me try meditation and let me try visualization. And it really gave me a purpose and it gave me ownership on the ultimate outcome of my life.
Many people want to navigate life with peace and joy, but struggle to connect to their intuition. They find themselves overwhelmed, burned out, and frustrated. My name is Francesca Phillips, and I'm obsessed with spirituality and psychology and how the two can intersect to help you live a successful and intuitive life. I believe each of us can accomplish amazing things through balance and healthy habits instead of burnout. Consider this your go-to resource for where spiritual wellness and mindful productivity meets practical wisdom. If you're craving positivity and want to know how to find the answers within instead of searching endlessly without, then you're in the right place. Get ready to feel supported and inspired. This is the Good Space Podcast. You're listening to the Good Space Podcast, episode number 36, How to Move with Intention for the Rest of Your Life with Carisa Findley. Before we dive in, I want to give my warm appreciation to our reviewer of the week, Gina Sky 1, and they say, totally recommend this podcast about spirituality, mindfulness, and productivity. It's my daily fix, and I get something great every time I listen. Thanks for being so wonderful and making a difference in my life. Gina Sky 1, thank you for your kind words. I'm so happy you love the show and are part of our community. If you want to be highlighted in an upcoming episode and help further the mission of the Good Space, make sure to subscribe and give us a review on Apple Podcasts so I can then highlight your review in an upcoming episode. It only takes a minute. You can pause the episode and come right back. Make sure to screenshot this episode on your phone and tag us on your Instagram story at @FindYourGoodSpace, #TheGoodSpace, to let me know that you're joining in today, as you know that I love to share those screenshots on our stories too. Listen, I'm not afraid to be honest here. A lot of people struggle with feeling overwhelmed and burned out, especially at the end of the year. The number one question I'm asked is, how do I know what to focus on? Or how can I simplify my life more and feel more peace? Look no further, my friend. In February, the Good Space is hosting an event with Dr. Amanda Tobe to help you create your own personal compass, which will make clear when to say no, what feels right to say yes to, and how to be truly intentional. This is such a gift, knowing what's worth saying no to and just simplifying the heck out of your life, knowing what's in alignment and going hard on the things that truly feel aligned to your soul. This will be a more personalized, community-based process that expands on what you'll learn in today's podcast episode. So if you find your head nodding yes and you're like, yes, I want to simplify, I want to clarify and move forward with intention and action and just faith, then click on the link in our show notes now to get the deets. All right, here we go. Welcome to the Good Space, everyone. We're on episode 36 with Carisa Findley. I'm so excited to talk to her today about how to move with intention for the rest of your life. We all know that this year is so different than 2020. Most of us are just tired and burned out, but that doesn't mean you can't use January as a way to still capture the emotion or the goals or the things that you want to accomplish for the rest of this year, however that might look for you. And so I brought on Carisa to talk to you about a few things. So let me tell you a little bit about her before I bring her on. And if you hear noise in the background or yipping, we have a puppy. My husband's on a work call. There was just no way to separate us. So you're going to hear it sometimes. So that's what that is. Okay, so Carisa Findley is an award-winning author, trainer, and international speaker who wakes up every day on a mission to help people live their fullest, most extraordinary life. She's supported leaders, business owners, and clients by helping them get clear on how to take their life to the next level. As a certified mindfulness teacher, Carisa develops training to help people learn tactical performance strategies to achieve the growth they desire. So welcome, Carisa.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy too. And just to give the person listening right now some context, you and I met at HPX Live, Brendan Bouchard's event last year almost a year ago in 2020. And it's kind of crazy. I think we were just sitting together during one of the exercises, we connected and we literally have kept in touch since. So yeah,
Absolutely. Like we love the same things. Like we work in the same space. We care about the same things and we're trying to help people with the same things in their lives. So it was definitely a blessing to meet you.
Yes, for sure. And I just love how it was so easy too. Like, I feel like there was no forcing of us like naturally connecting and just staying in touch and like genuinely, like, I care and want to hear about what you're doing. And I feel the same from you. And it's just such a blessing. You're right.
Me too. Agreed.
Why don't you tell, whoever's listening, maybe a little bit more about yourself or how you got to where you are now?
So I'm no one special, but I always wanted to be. I grew up in rural central Texas in a tiny, tiny town. I went to the same school, kindergarten through 12th grade, and it was the same school that my parents went to and my grandparents went to. And I always had this longing for more. I always knew that I was meant for bigger things and that I had so much more to share and to give and to achieve. I'm a natural achiever. So that's in my DNA. But I knew that I always wanted to be extraordinary. And so that first started to appear when I was in high school. I was like, I want to get into an Ivy League school. Like, I'm going to do it. But I didn't. I did not get into Princeton as I had hoped for. And so I battled a lot with, how do I become extraordinary if my external environment was ordinary? And I really struggled with that. And for a long time, I pointed fingers at my external environment and blamed it for not having an extraordinary life. I blamed my parents for forcing me to go to the same school that they went to. I blamed my parents for raising me in the middle of nowhere. I blamed the Ivy League schools for not letting me in. And I remember one day my mom said, I was complaining about my life, and my mom just my mom's a very caring, sincere, supportive person. And in slightly an uncharacteristic moment, my mom goes, "Well, what's your excuse now? What's your excuse? Like, what's your excuse now? Like, come on, you're an adult, Carissa. Why are you spending so much time blaming your external environment for the felt lack of success that you have?" And man, I mean, that hit home hard. Like when your mom can speak to you like on such a deep level.
Yes. Yes. It's scary sometimes. It's like, wait.
Oh my God. Well, it woke me up. And for the first time ever, I started to go, well, why aren't I doing the extraordinary things that I want in life? And I started to, instead of blaming my environment, I started to just realize all that I had been given and all the blessings that I had. I didn't go to an Ivy League school, but I still have a 4-year education from a great school. And I was surrounded by family and I was surrounded by love in my small little hometown. And I started to appreciate my external environment and realize that the success is up to me. I was like really grateful to come across Jack Canfield's book, The Success Principles, like years ago. And it's one of those books, those that changed my life. And the very first principle that he has is like, hey, you have the responsibility to create the life that you want. And if it's meant to be, it's up to you to go and get it. And so I started to approach life, and I was in my mid-20s about this time. I started to approach my life with, how do I want to build an extraordinary life for myself? I want these great things, but now what do I need to do and who do I need to become? And that started, Francesca, the beginning of my spiritual journey. I mean, that was me diving in and saying like, okay, well, let me try meditation and let me try visualization. And it really gave me a purpose and it gave me ownership on the ultimate outcome of my life. So I started my journey of implementing mindfulness strategies to help me perform better, to help me be better at my job, to help me be a better partner, to help me be a better family member. And so now what I do is now I'm a certified mindfulness teacher because I've seen the progression that I've been able to build from my perceived journey of ordinary to extraordinary. And I know the tools that work for me. I see the tools that work for others. And so that's my intention now, is to help people find their own journey to living their extraordinary life and giving them the tools that they need to do that.
That's so incredible. I love that. And it's funny because I think back to when I lived in Tucson, that's where I was raised, and just feeling the same exact way. Like I was in a small place with not much that resonated with me. And I felt like, okay, is this it? And so that started, my journey to go to Los Angeles for the music industry. But from there, it led to like a more spiritual one. So I think that's really cool that you felt that spark within and you knew, okay, this is not it for me. And I feel like that's the same with Oprah, who I love. She said that when her grandmother was preparing her to be a clothes washer for a family and being like, this is what you need to look forward to. And she's like, no, there's something bigger and greater. And so, anyone that's listening, if you ever felt like there's something bigger or greater for me to do or to be, follow that and keep watering that seed to see where it leads you. And so I guess my question then is, when you say that you have these tools and you're a mindfulness teacher, what are typically the things that you start someone off with, or what are questions that you ask? Like, how does that begin when you work with someone?
Yeah, it really is. I think understanding where they are now and what they want to accomplish. And then the third question, which I think is important, is like, what are you willing to invest? Like, what are you willing to do? Because I hear so many different stories about people on their spiritual journeys. And some of them, like we've all heard the story of the people who go off and become monks for years. And I do think that there's a place for that in people's journey, but that may not be what everybody wants to invest right now. So it's understanding, like, what are you willing to commit to now? And it doesn't have to be big. It can be, a lot of times with meditation, the objections that I get are, well, I don't have the right pillow to sit on. I don't have Tibetan singing bowls and I don't have an hour to sit there and have my mind completely quiet. And that's not necessarily what meditation needs to look like in your life for you to get started. So even if you're willing to say, hey, I'll give you 10 minutes a day, and that's what I can put into my life to start to practice some of these things. So I think first you have to understand that it's not an all or nothing approach. There is a place for any of these little practices to be sprinkled throughout your day. And it really is just about, what are you willing to commit to? Because it starts with waking up and asking yourself that question, like, what do I want? Like, what do I want my journey to be like? And also taking responsibility for being the person who puts in the work to accomplish those things. I know, like, one of the mistakes I made really early is when it came to like manifesting and vision boarding, is I would put that stuff up on my poster board and cut everything out and have my manifestations going. But I realized really quickly things weren't coming true. But it's also because I wasn't doing any action. I wasn't owning any responsibility of putting what needed to be put into place to help me achieve these things. So I do think that there has to first be that acknowledgement that if I want change, I'm going to have to be the one to do it.
Oh my gosh, that's so powerful. And I really want to point out the fact that you were saying, what does my ideal life look like? What do I want? And I really feel like this year is a year of honesty after the crazy 2020, everyone had to come to some sort of reckoning with themselves. And so hearing you say, what is it that you want? What kind of life you want? For some reason, it feels more powerful to me now than it probably would have before. And love that concept of, but what am I willing to put into it? Because you're right. If there's no action behind it, then you're not going to get what you actually want. And it reminds me of Atomic Habits, James Clear, where he breaks down how your inner belief or your why, obviously Simon Sinek's also the same, like your why are you doing it? Then it adds more power and conviction to the actions you actually take. So it really matters. It really matters knowing why you want to do something and if you're willing to do what it takes.
Well, and we get disconnected from that every time we turn on the news, right? Every time we, get hit with something else at work, anytime the kids need some, I mean, all day long, we're getting pulled farther and farther away from our why. And so I think that's a practice that you have to be really intentional about, whether that is just writing your why on an index card and sitting it on your nightstand and committing to every morning when you wake up, you are looking at your why. What is the dream that you have for your life? And you're moving forward in your day. Maybe you put it as a reminder in your phone that goes off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Whatever it takes to just constantly keep you in a state of connection with your why, because the world will work to pull you away from that all day long.
Yes, I'm glad you brought this up because I've had a few people message me saying, I'm a parent, and when my childcare changes, I get flustered and I don't do my morning routine. And they often ask me, how do I be more flexible with the things that I want to do to feel better? So do you have advice for that, for those times where the kids call you or like something happens or the news, or like your habit is to scroll on your phone? Like, what ideally would you tell someone?
Absolutely. I think that's it. That is what gets people off track of any goal that they set or any intentional focus that they have. What gets us off track is, I think we set goals and we create intentions, or we try to create new routines and habits from an idyllic state. Right? Like we say, I'm going to do this morning routine, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to accomplish this goal, and this is what I'm going to do. But we think about it in a bubble where it's just perfect. Where like the kids are, school schedule is set. It's not dark and cold and the peak of winter when we're trying to get up early. And so one of the things that I always encourage people to do when they're trying to form any new habit or reach any new goal is to have a plan for failure. Have a plan for failure. While you're setting your goal in this idyllic state, have a plan for failure. What do you know will cause you to get off track? Like maybe it is addressing that, hey, I want to get up early and work out, but what happens is the first thing I do is I pick up my phone, and once I start scrolling, baby, I can't stop. Okay, so how do you plan for some of these potential obstacles? The kids, your partner, the weather. Think through what's going to be your backup plan. So if you want to get up and go to an exercise class early morning, but you know that there are going to be days when it's snowing out and your car's covered in snow and you're not going to want to get up a half hour early to do that. Like, what's going to be your plan B? Well, maybe your plan B is that I know there is a class at noon at one of my favorite fitness studios that I can go to as a backup. So it sounds so counterintuitive to plan for failure, but that's the difference that makes people either give up or keep going is that they've got a plan B in case one day they fail on plan A.
Yeah, that's great. I love that idea. And I definitely tell people when it comes to morning routines, I call it your SOS routine, where you just had a major move or like something happened. So you just like pivot to like two things that you can do no matter what. And I love that idea. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost feels like you are almost parenting yourself. Like there's two versions of you. So it's like the higher self is almost like teaching and guiding the like ego personality, like human self. And so it's almost like, okay, like I'm creating structure for you and I'm making it so it's possible for you to keep moving forward. Cause I definitely feel that fight all the time where I'm like, okay, I do my morning routine, I do these things, but then there's also a side of me that just wants to scroll on Instagram and lay on the couch. And so it's almost like you're giving yourself the best chance possible to listen to that higher self.
Yeah. And I've heard you talk about that before, the idea of just self-parenting. Like you're right. Like it feels so much like that because there are times when a parent needs to be strict and focused. And there are times when a parent needs to be empathetic and supportive. And we have to do that with ourselves. Like we have to know when there are times that we have got to say, hey, we're not going to compromise on this anymore because this isn't helping us lead to our extraordinary life. And this is something you can't compromise on anymore. But then there are also times where we need to give ourselves a little bit of grace. Like, hey, maybe you didn't get up early to do your normal morning routine this Friday. You did it Monday through Thursday. You have a good routine going. How do you see yourself correcting for tomorrow? And so I think there is that constant balance because perfection is not the goal. Improvement is the goal. And so one of the things that I like to do is also, it's like we're always looking ahead. We've got the vision boards, we're looking ahead, we're setting our goals. It's a new year, but also just reflecting back on what I have accomplished and creating a gratitude board along with my vision board, right? Like what have I actually accomplished in 2020? Because as, heavy as a year as it felt, I also did some pretty incredible things. And we all did some pretty incredible things. We got through it. I mean, that's incredible enough. And so it really is just kind of training ourselves to also like see how far we've come. And when it empowers me to, when I see my journey, I can look back and that excites me to keep moving forward. The looking back and acknowledging it helps me build that excitement and enthusiasm around moving forward on days that I don't want to.
Oh, it's so great. And I love when you said it's not about perfection, it's about progress. And I also would like to add to this, it's also about feeling good. And I think that's something that I've lost count of, or like I'm not conscious of that. But I finally, after this last year, I'm like, no, I not only want to be 100% honest with myself moving forward, but I also want to do things that feel good. And that definitely feels counterintuitive. But I think that when we think of life in those ways, like, is this making me feel good or am I doing it because I feel I should? It's almost like the clarity starts to come and it just makes such a difference.
Yes. And it's, like Gabby Bernstein says, like the universe responds when you're having fun. And I feel like the fun, like you said, was drained out of last year. I mean, even the fun things that we used to go and do, like we can't do anymore.
Like a literal draining of fun things, like
yes.
a physical. Yeah. It's unreal.
Yes. Yeah. And so I do think that it's like that just kind of joy raises your state, right? Like it lifts your frequency. And from that place, then we are more connected to our highest self. And from there, we're awakened to all of the creativity that's within us and ultimately really help focused in on what we want for the future.
Yes. It's so great. And it's funny that you mentioned the gratitude portion in addition to the vision and the goals, because even just today, someone, actually Dr. Amanda Tobe, who has been on the podcast a couple of times, she and I were chatting today and she said, oh, when did you start the Good Space? And I'm like, oh, like, I think, I was online, 2016, but I think 2018 is when I really was like, I've got something here. Let's roll with it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it's technically only 2 years ago. And since then, I have a successful copywriting business that didn't exist in 2018, but now it's funding almost everything I'm doing. And then I have 3 part-time people working with me. And I'm like, wait a second, this is crazy. Like I am so hard on myself and I'm just like, what's next? What's next? What's next? How am I lacking? What am I not doing? That just taking that second where someone reflected back to me, oh my gosh, that's amazing what you're doing. I'm like, wait, you're right. Like I didn't even think it was possible before that. And yet somehow, I don't know, it just felt really good. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And is there anything that you would say you've looked back on recently and you've been really excited about or are grateful for?
Yeah, it's so interesting how like so many of us we're programmed to see lack, scarcity, like not enough. It's always what's next in front of us. And so those little aha moments are so powerful when you have them. You're like, wow, I really am doing an incredible job. And like, it really lifts your spirit to have those, because we live in a world where like, we're never enough. We're not doing enough. There's always more to accomplish. So yeah, I recently had that as well too, because I started back in 2018 with my public speaking business, and then, really tried to help get it off the ground in 2019, had some things booked for 2020. And then of course, like everything came to a screeching halt. And it left me in this place where, I mean, early into the pandemic, March and April, man, I was struggling, like just emotionally, I was struggling. I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear. I realized I had a lot of like kind of PTSD from 2008 and then the recession in 2009 that my brain immediately went back to. And I was struggling. And I remember one day kind of really coming out of that fog and having this kind of just thought that if I'm struggling this much and I have the tools to help me with this anxiety and fear, like meditation and visualization and breathing and exercise, if I have these tools already in my toolkit, what are people doing that don't? And that lit a fire in me. That said, okay, 2020, I have a choice. Like, I can continue to move through it in the state of anxiety and stress and fear that I'm in, or I can kind of lift up out of the uncertainty and see it as opportunity to help other people who don't even have the practices that I do. And that lit me up and empowered me. And so I started like going full steam ahead in developing online courses and just weekly content that I could put out to help people who were still struggling with these and continue to struggle with these, but helping people like realize that you can still show up as your best, even if your external environment is not what you want it to be. And that helped me get through 2020, and it is still helping me get through 2021. And that is a moment where, I looked back and I go, oh my gosh, like I'm like in October. So 4 months ago, none of this part of my business even existed. I was not creating weekly video. I mean, now I've got hundreds of email subscribers, followers, people that I'm helping, courses, webinars that are all coming out. And you have those moments where you're like, wow, like I can do anything that I put my mind to. And it's been as much work as it has been, and how much uncertainty I'm facing. It's also been really empowering when you look back and go, man, like what way to seize opportunity and uncertainty.
I want to take a quick pause for a second and ask if you've ever heard people talking about being the designers, authors, or leaders of their own life and wonder how they did it. I know I have. It sounds great, right? Getting to design and create and lead your own life, but a lot of times those can be filler words. What does that actually mean in practice? And what can I do to make that a reality? The biggest way that people become the designers, authors, and leaders of their own life is because they're intentional about how they want to feel and they have the tools to do it. They know the habits that will help them feel their best. And while they have to-do lists, like most of us do, they also know what is on their not to-do list, which is super important. So that is why Dr. Amanda Tobe and I want to help you become the designer of your own life too, and share with you an experiential way to create your own personal compass with a workshop that we're putting on February 20th. And if you're enjoying what we're talking about on today's podcast and want to create your own compass, but do it with the guidance of myself and Amanda and with a small group of awesome people, this is for you. Through getting clear on how you want to feel in your life, you will learn to simplify your life, which is what we all want, right? We want to simplify. So in this workshop, you'll learn to focus on what's important and do more of what makes you feel good and less of what doesn't fill your cup. If this sounds like something you want support with, then come and join our next workshop beginning February 20th. Link with more details is in our bio. I hope to see you there. Oh, it's so great. And I can see this theme weaving throughout where you really are like, I don't want the external to affect my internal or what I'm doing. And that's beautiful. That's so powerful. And I hope whoever's listening to this knows that regardless of your circumstance, you can make of it what you will. You can learn whatever lesson you want to learn. You can pivot or turn or do whatever with it that you can to make it a positive experience. And I was actually just reading about this in the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. And he talks about that exact thing. Like when you're given a circumstance or situation, it's up to you on how you want to use it to your advantage or for your growth and your expansion. And I think you are a wonderful example of doing just that. And so speaking of anxiety and fear and all those things, we're in January right now as of this recording. And, maybe some people were inspired enough to make goals, or maybe just like me, I didn't make any goals, but I thought of my words of the year and I'm focusing more on the feeling of things. But either way, I'm sure there are many people who are like, okay, I'm not feeling it anymore. I'm kind of burning out. So what would you do or have someone walk through to be able to move with intention for the rest of their life, to kind of re-energize and set up some sort of framework or like foundation for moving with intention from this point on?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because it's like we start off the new year, man, and we are pumped, like we are excited. So many people are like, this year is going to be my year, and you get your resolutions or your goals. Some people are not like that, and that's okay. Wherever you are, you be you. But it's like whatever focus you had for the new year, whenever life comes in, like we talked about earlier, it's always pulling you away from that big why or those reasons or those goals. Like we get caught up in the day to day, and we also operate every single day based on old programming, right? Of old beliefs about ourselves. We want this new life, but we also then operate like 90% of our day in our unconscious that has been programmed maybe by the past, right?
Amen. Amen.
So we want these new things, but we spend 90% of the day in our old self trying to get these new things. So it's only natural that we start to just kind of pivot back towards the way things always were. We always kind of get pulled back into our comfort zone. So I think the first thing that you have to do is you just have to acknowledge when you see that happening. And for me, I've talked about this before. It's like, I feel like there's times in my life where I get pulled, like I can feel myself going out of my comfort zone, and my brain goes, no, don't do that. Go back, give up everything, return back to the way things were. And so I think it's just being empowered to have the ability to be aware of your mind of when it's happening. Know that those thoughts are not you, right? And that they're not truths. Like this is not true. So anytime I kind of start to feel myself losing momentum because I get pulled back into what's comfortable for me, I hear these kind of fear statements come up, and I just ask like, okay, I hear you. Is this true? And that question just helps me disrupt the cycle, the fear get into, right? So it's just like a pattern interrupt where I say, okay, is that true? Is it true that I will lose all my money if I try to make this investment? Is that true? Like, is that true? And so it just takes the power away from fear. And once I've asked if it's true and really examined it, I start to take its power away. And then I replace it with an affirmation. And I know you're big on the power of affirmations. I mean, so am I. It's just the ability to kind of rely on your highest self to communicate to you at a time that you need it most. Like that's how I use affirmations. Is I have a time where my highest self communicates to me in a time that I need it most. And I go to those affirmations as a way to say, hey, highest self, I need you. I'm in a negative thought process. What do I need to have? What mindset do I need to have as I move forward to try to overcome this fear? And I love that. I love that ability to just be like, oh yeah, fear, you think you're so tough? My higher self is tougher. And here's what I got to say to you. I am a powerful force of the universe, and I am connected to the abundance that is within the universe. So it's like, that's just my way of like taking control back of my mind. It's not me. It's not me saying those things. And so that's just how I reconnect to my true self.
Oh, it's so great. And I started thinking of how sometimes when you hear things online or you hear different people speaking, I often am like, like I'm skeptical and I'm like, who are you to say this? Like, I mean, not that you need credentials, but it's like almost like I have a barrier that I need to get through before I trust someone. And it's almost like we need to do that same thing with our own thoughts, because like you said, they're habits and we repeat like 90% of the same thoughts and actions every single day. And so knowing that we're so stuck in this cycle, sure, like thinking about saying, oh, is this true is good. But what if someone's so stuck in the reactive mode? Is there something that they can do preemptively or like, to get to that place where they are able to ask that question and catch themselves? Because I feel like the catching of yourself is the hardest part. And I know for me, like I had a therapist who had me literally throughout the day, I had 3 columns on a piece of paper and I would write down the negative thought. I would ask if it was true and I would ask what's inspiring that thought. And so that was the way that I was able to start doing it automatically. But are there other ways that you suggest for someone who maybe is struggling?
Yeah. And we have just these strong neural pathways that are formed that create our habit, right? So it's like if every time you walk into the kitchen, you reach for a snack in the pantry, the more you do that over and over, the more that pathway gets reinforced. So then one day when your higher self kind of comes to light and says, hey, from now on, we're not going to do that. Like, we're not going to snack throughout the day. We're only going to eat at our meal times. Well, like what happens when you walk into the kitchen for the first time? Like, I mean, your programming goes back to snacking, and then you're fighting with yourself. And then when you're fighting with yourself, like then your body kind of switches to the sympathetic state. You're like fight or flight, like you're angry and you're, then nothing is working in your favor. So you have to prepare for those moments ahead of time. And that's where the practice of meditation has been so beneficial for me, because my meditation practice is my ability to strengthen my awareness. Because the more you are aware, like that's the first step is that do I have the awareness to see when this pathway is like firing off, right? And I'm going to the pantry. Do I even have the awareness to see the connection to that? And you have to prepare for it, because in the moment, it is hard. It is hard to not walk to the pantry to get a snack. And like, I'm sorry, there's no affirmation that's going to turn you away.
Absolutely. Because if there was, then no one would have those problems.
We would just say, no, my body is fit and slim. But you have to prepare for it in advance. Just like you have to prepare your failure plan, you have to prepare for what's going to happen when you walk into the kitchen on that first day of your diet. So you have to have the awareness, and that takes time to develop through a meditation practice. And once you can tap into that, then you can move to the next level. But I think it's so much when it comes to goal setting that I find, and like I'm guilty of this myself too. It's like, I want to set a goal, snap my finger, and just have it magically appear. That's not how goals work. Like, you have to do the work and you have to be able to commit long term to it. You have to be able to have the meditation practice, have the practice of awareness for a long time before you start to get into that cycle of being able to what happens next, and is this true, and have those next level conversations with yourself. But it takes time. And then I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. The more you are connected to your why, the easier it is to be in the long haul of what it takes to hit your goal. The more you are connected to your why, the harder it becomes to give up, and the more committed you can be to practicing the skills that you need in the times that you need it most. So it really is having such a clear focus of yourself and where do you want to be. I went to Tony Robbins a few years ago, and like one of the activities that I loved the most was we did an activity where, it's like, what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? Now imagine yourself in 5 years and you have not accomplished any of that. How does that feel? And that was such a powerful motivator for me. Like I could picture myself standing in front of my vision board and knowing that I had not accomplished any of these things, looking at my list of goals and knowing that I had not done any of it. And it made me feel sick. Like it was an anger that I had not experienced before, but I mean, to this day, it drives me to keep pushing forward because I will not be the person in 5 years who looks back at the old Carissa and says, well, you gave up. You didn't try. It wasn't worth it. You didn't want to put in the work. You didn't want to do what it takes. And you have to just do what it takes.
I'm so glad you said that. And I really want to point out the importance of what you said in that this is a long haul type of thing. This is going to take effort. This is going to take work. So I am not here to just tell you, oh, like set a goal and do these things. No, this is like a lifestyle decision, awareness, and asking yourself, is this true? This is like a forever thing, right? So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, that sounds good, like, but I don't know if I could, it's like, no, you need to have like a commitment to increasing your awareness, to having that stillness, to be able to hear your higher self. And it won't be easy. I wish I could say, this will be easy. Here's the answer, but it's not at first. It's because it's all about changing the habit. Because once you're in the habit of having awareness, of doing the meditation, of, asking yourself those questions, it literally becomes your new state of being. And I can testify to that. And I know you can too. I had to teach myself how to ask myself those questions by writing it down on paper for like 2 weeks. It took me. And then eventually I realized when I would have a thought in my head, I'd be like, oh, is that true? And why am I saying this? And I'm like, whoa, it just happened in the snap of a finger. And then same with meditation. I tried it for 2 days for 10 minutes and then I hated it. And I was on and off for like 6 months. But then eventually I realized, okay, in order, like you said, to connect to creativity, to connect to your goals and to actually like have the stamina that you need, you do need that awareness. And I don't care if you call it meditation. You can call it your awareness practice. The word meditation has this stigma around it. So if you need to label it differently, please do. But it literally is like the most flexible, quickest, easiest way to get that connection. If there's anything else, let me know. I mean, I know yoga helps, gentle yoga does that, but I feel like literally give meditation a shot because it connects you to it taps you into the potential of the universe. And like, what could be better than that?
What could be better than that? I mean, that's where my journey started, is through meditation. That was the very first practice that I ever did. And you're right. Like when I started it, I hated it. And I was like trying to sit cross-legged and like it hurt my hips. And like, I was like, my back was rounding and, I just like, I hated it. I couldn't get comfortable. But then I found what worked for me. And it doesn't have to be a label of meditation. It doesn't have to be that you follow certain meditation teachers. Like, let it evolve. Give yourself the freedom to let it evolve and whatever it means to you. But it is now, I mean, it's the most valuable practice that I have in my day because, and the more you do it, the better you get at it, where you can just kind of tap in, get what you need from it, like recharge your battery and then move forward. I feel like when I come out of my meditation, I have such a lightness and an ease. And so anything that comes at me that day, like I move forward and I can handle it with lightness and ease. That alone is a transformational practice, is to be able to bring your awareness back to you, notice without judgment when you're starting to get tapped up in your external environment, and reinforce that practice of just self-control, self-empowerment.
Like you said, it brings you back to home, and it's almost like the seat of the soul. That's what Gary Zukav calls it. You're sitting in the seat of your soul and you start to view the world differently. Yeah, I think it's so worth figuring out what works for you. And I often feel like, at least for me, when I first started, the reason I avoided it and I hated it is because I hated sitting with myself and I hated letting things bubble up and like having to deal with these emotional issues or blockages. Whereas before I could just react to everything around me and it's almost like an excuse, right? But it's like once you actually sit with yourself, you're almost like, what do I do with this? And it can be overwhelming, but just ease into it, allow yourself to expand and to be more aware. And that is such a great way, I feel like, to re-energize yourself. You're refocusing, you're realigning. So far you've said, ask yourself, is this true? And then work on having some sort of awareness practice or meditation practice. So are there other things that we can do to re-energize and just have a personal foundation for intention?
Absolutely. I am such a proponent of exercise. Move your body. An object at rest stays at rest. It is physics. You cannot argue with it. But if you want to really have like making a change is hard. Like it requires work. And so you have to come to that with a certain amount of energy. And I get that from exercise. And I don't mean that you need to go do an hour-long HIIT class or go run 4 miles. I mean, you need to move your body. You need to stretch or walk or have some sort of, maybe do some squats in your chair while you're on your computer. But you need to move your body because an object in motion stays in motion. And so when you can get your blood pumping and increase your oxygen to your lungs and like really get the blood flowing. I mean, there's so many great benefits too that also happens when you release endorphins and how you're able to manage your cortisol levels that are getting kicked out every time you're stressed. There's so many great benefits from exercise, but if anything, I notice such a difference. Like I'm almost to the point where I can't not do some sort of exercise every single morning because I notice such a drastic difference in my energy level. If I don't go work out in the morning, man, I am so tired. I'm like, how do people get through life like this? Like I'm exhausted. I don't want to get off my couch, but it gives you the energy that you need. And the other thing that I love about the discipline of exercise is that it will help you prove to yourself that you can do hard things over and over and over again. My exercise is my ability to build my confidence in overcoming large obstacles. Because guess what? Every time I'm told I have to do a minute worth of burpees, I'm like, oh, you got to freaking be kidding me. And every burpee, I think this is the last burpee. I want to take a break after this burpee. And then I do another burpee. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to take another break. I can't do one more. And then I do one more. And I'm constantly proving to myself that, yeah, things are hard, but you're able to do hard things. So there is a mental conditioning that happens as well as like what's getting built in your body physiologically. And I love that. Like go out and physically prove to yourself that you can do hard things and you can overcome whatever gets thrown your way and that you are a fighter and you don't give up. And that's such a great practice. You do that once a day, you are going to create a new neural pathway in your brain that says, I can overcome challenges. I can hit my goals. I can finish strong no matter what comes my way.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, yes, let's go. I want to go.
Let's go work out.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's great. I actually feel that way about yoga. When I was going to a studio before COVID hit, I really felt inspired seeing other women who were like miles ahead of me in their practice. And it wasn't like a comparison where I was jealous. I was like, oh, okay, I can hold my plank now a little longer because she can do it, so I can do it. And so, sometimes maybe we need an accountability or like someone else. And like, I have a friend who's a personal trainer. And so we've been doing virtual sessions and I feel like I'm more able to push myself when I have someone. So even if you can do it with a friend or like if that makes you more conscious of what you're doing physically, do that as well. And it feels so satisfying. Like when I could hold certain poses in yoga that I couldn't a year ago, it feels amazing. It feels so inspiring.
Yes, yes. And I love that you brought up, have an accountability partner. Like if you want to create any change in your life, like know that your mind is going to work against you. It doesn't want to change. It wants to stay in its comfort zone where things are predictable and everything feels safe and certain. But having an accountability partner, it really takes you to the next level because it allows you to escape that mental battle that you go with in your brain where like, I should get up. I don't want to get up. It's too cold. Well, get up. You said you were going to get up. Now you just have someone else to reinforce that like warrior voice that lives within you. Like, so get somebody to cheer on your inner warrior.
Yes. And we're not sharing this to stress you out because I know when I was learning these habits, I'm like, oh, like I think I expected to learn meditation and then not have to have effort ever again. Like I would learn, I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but we're not saying this to like make you think, oh, I have to put this crazy effort all the time. It's just more like this is going to be a lifelong practice. Even the best people, even the most practiced spiritual, intuitive people, they always feel this struggle too. So this will never fully go away, but when you make things a habit, if you can just stick with it until it becomes an automatic state of being, then it does become a little easier, or just easier in general. But yeah, I'm thinking back to how I was, where I was just like looking for an answer and I didn't have to worry about it again. It's like, no, just breathe, give yourself compassion, try to make the best choice in every moment you can, and just know that this is going to be a lifelong learning, and we're going to change. Like we change as we grow. I'm a different person now than I was 10 years ago. So my practice changes with me. And so just being willing to adjust with where you're at in the moment.
Yeah. And the good thing is that with that will come a change in the core belief about who you are. Like if you do this day in, day out, it's like, yeah, you have to release that pressure. Like there's not a destination. Like it's just a journey. Like that's all that we're on. There are no trophies at the end of this. Like it really just is about creating this core belief. Like I have a mantra where like my goal is to show up as my best self every day. And some days my best self is not as good as it was yesterday, but honey, that is my best today. But I know that I have an intentional focus to stay on the journey. Like that's all it is. Like give up trying to hit anything, give up trying to accomplish anything. I love, like I live in Colorado. And so I'll be on the trails on a hike and you'll pass people coming down the trail who are heading up and they'll be like, so was it worth it at the top? And I'm like, honey, I'm not here to reach the top. Like I'm here for the journey. Like I don't need a hike to have this beautiful, grand view at the top. Like I'm here just to be in nature and to look at the trees. And like, that's a shift. And it's a shift that takes time, but all you have to do is just work on just a little bit of progress. How can I be my best self today and just enjoy the journey? Look around you, smile, recognize all that you've accomplished. And within that, you will find that naturally you're getting closer and closer to the person that you want to be.
I just love it because so many of us are taught to, like you said, go after the goal, go after the whatever. And it's pressure. Like I just feel pressure all the time. And these kinds of practices aren't meant to have pressure. We are meant to be present. We are meant to enjoy the now. We are meant to, like you said, do our best right now. And it's amazing to me, and it continues to amaze me, that the universe is so loving and kind that the only way to manifest things is through fun, is through presence, is through the things that make us feel good. And so it's like, it just shows how human I am that I can't fathom someone being like that. And so just keep reminding yourself, it's all about being present. It's all about the gratitude and just feeling good. And yeah. Well, Carisa, this has been amazing. I always feel like when we chat, I could talk to you for just hours and hours and hours.
Me too.
I always love your energy, and I'm so excited for everything you're doing. So can you share with us where people can find you, what you have going on, that maybe they can continue learning this information from you and all of the good stuff?
Yes, absolutely. So the best place to find me is at Instagram, and it's at Carisa Findley, CarissaFindley. So I put all of the latest things that I've got going on up there. I'm also, for kind of to kick off 2021, I am doing a blueprint course to help you design, visualize, and achieve your dream life. So whether you are that person like Francesca, who's like, I haven't set any goals yet, but maybe you're re-inspired to start thinking about, maybe they're not goals, but it is getting really intentional about, what do I want my life to look like? And what do I want to accomplish? And how do I want to help others? And then I teach visualization as a mindfulness tool to help your brain be your ally in helping you reach that life. And then, of course, as you can probably tell, it's all about the action that you're willing to put behind it to create the life that you know is destined for you. And so it really is a blueprint course to help you get really clear on that. So I've got that that going on as well too. If the talk about meditation inspires you, I've got a free guided meditation on my website that you can go and check out. And my website's just carisafindley.com.
That sounds perfect. We'll make sure that everything is linked in the show notes. If any of that sounds good to you, just head on over there and you can click to everything she talked about. Is there any last words that you want to leave before we sign off?
I think it really is just, this is a time more than ever for us to move forward with our life with intention. I think it is time now to stop pointing the finger and placing the blame on our external environment and own how we show up to live our life every day. Do not let another year go by where you wished for things that never came true. And this is a time, like, it's crazy outside. Like, how can we focus in and really capitalize on being the person who lives an extraordinary life? And then most importantly, how can we share that with others?
Thank you. It's so wonderful. It's so great. All right. Well, I will talk to you soon. Now it's time for an affirmation. I intend to evolve to my highest self with love and intentional practice every day. If you found today's tips inspiring or thought-provoking, share it right now on social media and make sure to tag me at Francesca A. Phillips or at Find Your Good Space, and also weigh in the comment section at findyourgoodspace.com. You can find links in the show notes. And if you have a spiritual or mindfulness problem that you want me to unpack on an upcoming The Good Space episode, or an awesome manifesting story you want to share, give my podcast phone line a ring right now at 917-719-0867. Also, don't forget to download my free morning routine guide. It's what helped me reduce my anxiety, increase productivity, and so much more. The link to everything I mentioned is in the show notes. See you soon.